answer some questions afterwards. Sound good?
Okay, yeah, excellent.
All right, we're started. Okay. Hey guys, how you doing? My name's Nathan Roberts, and I'm the author of The Doctrine of the Shape of the Earth. And you guys can check out my website for more information at flatearthdoctrine.com. I've also released the Kindle edition of my first children's book called Earth is Flat Like a Mat. There is a disinformation campaign against myself on Amazon. You'll be able to see the difference, though. You can also check out my video that I go into details and to discuss that disinformation campaign against my book. So tonight, I'm so thankful. This is the second time that I've been able to do an interview with Brother Rob Taylor. He is a born-again Christian. He loves the Lord. But furthermore, he also is a commercial pilot, as well as he's worked as an U.S. embassy officer. I believe he knows around 7 or 8 languages. He's working on a PhD. He graduated from West Point. And on top of that, he also believes that the earth is flat. Correct me if I'm wrong, Rob. Is that correct? Do you believe the earth is flat?
I don't believe anything that I can't show and demonstrate. I can more appropriately stated, I can show you evidence that the earth cannot be a globe.
Okay, well, before we get into that, why don't you tell us a little bit more about your background, your education, as well as your career?
Okay, sounds good. I've been studying political, military, economic, social, cultural, and religious factors since 1991. I lived in Korea for 2 years. I speak the Korean language fluently. Following that, I joined the military, went to West Point as a cadet officer. 4 years there. I studied engineering, physics, and engineering project management at West Point, meaning I got the entire basic engineering background knowledge of West Point. Okay. Physics, I've studied basic physics at the advanced level at West Point. So that's like a double layer of advanced on that physics class I took. Then the next semester was electromechanical physics. Okay. And then later on, once I went into my engineering project management, I studied engineering physics. So there's 3 layers of physics right there. Okay. And then I studied a lot of design, project management design. Okay. So then from there, I went into the physics of flight, Army Flight School, Rotary Wing Flight School. Okay. So I've got all my basic physics, and then I've got the physics of flight on top of that. So then I served 9 years as a flight officer, aviation officer, and I could talk about that. Multiple beautiful experiences in flying, and then other experiences as well, as everybody has. And then from there, I migrated into the embassy officer component of the United States military, and I have, through part of that, I obtained 2 master's degrees, one in geostrategic analysis, and the other one is in regular civilian political science. In all, though, I served for 10 years as an embassy officer. I've touched 18 different countries in Africa, meaning I've set foot in 18 countries. And I've lived in Africa 18 full months. Okay, so that being said, I already spoke Korean. I got the highest grade in Russian when I studied Russian at West Point. Because I already knew Korean, I got the highest grade in Russian. I mean, A+. I got the highest A+ of all of the 2 or 3 A pluses. Okay, so I speak from there. I taught myself Spanish. Then the military sent me to DLI to study French and then Portuguese. And from there I went to Mozambique, where they speak continental Portuguese, not Brazilian Portuguese. So I know both Brazilian Portuguese and continental Portuguese. While I was in Africa, I learned Swahili, Lugandan, and Acholi, which are Eastern African trade languages. Swahili is an Eastern African trade language. So that being said, there's my language studies. There's my political military economics, and I'm also studying a PhD now in political economics. Imagine that. So once I get that, I'll have the political, military, and economics all studied at the graduate level with the PhD included in there. So I'm looking forward to that. Just for the personal knowledge. I'm not doing it for any career advancement. I'm doing it for my own advancement, so I can learn and study all these things. That being said, how did I come into flat Earth? Well, my buddy shamed me into it. I have a buddy in Houston, Texas. His name is John, and he'd love to watch this thing. But I convinced him that Abraham Lincoln was a dictator of a president, and I showed him that the Civil War in this country was not a civil war, but it was not a war of the North against the South. It was a war of the bankers against the citizens of this country. And his name being Lincoln, he didn't necessarily like that. Everybody thinks Abraham Lincoln saved the Constitution and everything else, but that couldn't be as a bigger lie. It's as big a lie as the globe Earth is. Abraham Lincoln was a dictator president, and every president since him has been a sham and a shyster president. We lost our government, in other words, in 1860. Okay, that being said, so John told me this. I initially, because I'm a pilot, I'm a commercial pilot, by the way. I do have a commercial rating. So when I heard that my buddy John telling me about flat Earth and all the different, and a few of the different factors involved, I would not listen to it. I said, John, that's craziness. You think I'm going to say something like that and look like a fool? Well, here's what John eventually told me. John told me, he said, Rob, you convinced me that Abraham Lincoln was a dictator of a president. The Civil War shouldn't have happened. And by the way, World War I and World War II were both banker wars as well. John convinced me of that. He told me, Rob, you convinced me of that. And he told me this. He went forward and he said, Rob, if you want to remain a slave, then continue ignoring the flat Earth. However, the contrary statement of that is, if you want to wake up and learn about real world history, then you will study flat Earth. And when he said that, I thought to myself, I have dedicated my whole career, the last 27 years, to finding truth. Now, when he told me that I would remain a slave to the matrix unless I looked at flat Earth, that's when I did my legitimate research. And literally, it took me about 5 minutes. It only took me 5 minutes when I compared what I know, and I mean my scientific knowledge of physics and flight and attitude indicator and everything else. When I started analyzing what the flat Earth community has to say, the flat Earth reality, as soon as I took a genuine look at it, I never went back. And I realized this is absolutely true. And I've been lied to my whole life. There's the simple truth of it.
Man, haven't we all?
Yes, sir. So therefore, I just described to you 22 years of formal schooling, 2 master's degrees, and flight instruction. And I was lied to the entire time. And it's amazing.
I got a question, Rob. During your flight testing and your studying, and as well as your experience in flight, did it ever cross your mind that you were not living on a spinning ball? Did it ever cross your mind once? Did you question any of it? No.
Not once. Never questioned it. And to tell you the truth, they carefully conceal it. They never even bring it up. And you know what? I remember there were a couple times in class, in the classes, because I was in the class with 20 or 30 other Army lieutenants, right? We're learning about flight. There were a couple times when somebody brought up the attitude indicator and asked them about the curve of the Earth. That came up once or twice. Now I remember it in my head, right? But you know what happens? The instructor doesn't know how to deal with it. And the answer is, well, it probably just happens. It just has to happen that way. They don't have an answer. They just gloss over it. And nobody knows enough. Nobody has the presence of mind. We really don't know enough to even talk about it. The powers that be have so well concealed the flat Earth concepts that nobody even asks the question. We don't even ask the question.
Right. Yeah, I agree. Okay. So I have another question for you then. So for those who are skeptical about living on a ball-shaped Earth, though haven't yet embraced flat Earth, can you please explain how flight paths work on a flat Earth?
Very simple. Let's say I'm going to put you in the pilot seat. Okay. You've done all your flight checks of your engine. All your systems are working. All your lights are green. All your dials are in the green zone. You're ready to go. Okay. Apply your brakes. Throttle to 100%. Now your aircraft's vibrating, ready to go. Release the brakes. Your aircraft's going to launch forward. Pretty soon, the thing's going to want to take off the ground. Pull back your yoke a little bit. Cruise up. Guess what? You're off the ground in about 3 seconds. Now you're in the air. Now ascend up to your elevation, where your flight altitude, right? And then once you hit your flight altitude, you fly at your same altitude at 36,000 feet for 3 hours, and then you land. Okay? There's one thing that we always do before we take off, and that is to cage the attitude indicator. What that does, it releases that gyro that's in there. We release the gyro, let it spin freely, okay, back to its calibrated with the level runway in front of you, okay? So whenever you're flying, that attitude indicator is reflecting that level runway where we take off, okay? That's what we cage the attitude indicator right there, okay? So forevermore, throughout that flight, when I ascend to altitude and I fly there at 36,000 feet for 3 hours, I'm flying level, the same level that I was on that airstrip when I took off. And by law, no pilot will cage or release that gyro throughout his flight because that attitude indicator is locked to the flat bearing of the airstrip where he departed. So therefore, now let's just make the association here. For that 3 hours when I'm flying at 36,000 feet, my attitude indicator is flying level with that airstrip from whence I departed 3 hours ago.
So obviously it's very important for the tire pressures to be correct when setting also the attitude.
Well, you want your tire pressure to be correct so you don't blow a tire when you land.
Well, aside from that, no, but aside from that, if it was even slightly off, it could even potentially throw off the balance of the leveling of the altitude.
Actually, that's not so much the case. Let's say you got two tires and one of them is 50% pressure. Mm-hmm. Okay, so your aircraft is sagging a little bit to the right where mm-hmm. that tire pressure is low. Okay, well, sounds good. That's no big deal because that might cause a slight degree. I mean, a very slight amount of tilt in your attitude indicator, but that's no big deal. That's going to be negligible when it comes down to it.
Gotcha. So
you're leveling you're leveling with the airstrip, the airfield,
which must be flat and level.
Correct. And look at any airstrip. What do you see? A nice flat level airstrip.
That's true. Okay, well, great. We'll move on to the next question. Does all aviation assume a flat plane? Any reason not to assume a flat plane during aviation? Whether that's helicopter or airplane?
Well, the answer to that is no, because the whole world assumes the globe. Aviation is no different. The aviation community does not know anything about flat Earth. All they know is what's shoved down their neck in the schools. Okay, and the globe is taught with all navigation. It's all taught with a globe. But guess what? When we do our flying maps, they're all flat. So there's a big disconnect. We fly over a flat Earth, but don't even realize it. I mean, it was to the point where there I was, a dual master's degree holder with all my physics, and my buddy was doing his best to tell me, Rob, the Earth is flat. Here it is. And I scoffed at him. And I was the average aviator. I mean, we have no idea that it's flat. I'll tell you this, I have two Air Force pilot buddies. They scoff at me for talking about flat Earth. But the fact is, they cannot talk with me now because I have the physics behind it. They cannot argue the physics, but they will hold on to their little nutshell of an idea. They just won't let it go. It's ego for them. They won't let it go. The one guy, I think he's involved in the high jump mission that flies to the south. I mean, flies to Antarctica once a month. Literally, he flies to Antarctica once a month, but he won't listen to me on the flat Earth. I think he has some secret clearance involved here. That's why he won't talk with me. He won't engage with me on that.
And it might be wise for him. It might be wise for him to do so, and maybe you as well.
Indeed, in that case, that is true. We don't want Big Brother after us because Big Brother has means and ways of doing things, and we don't want people to lose their careers. But the facts remain that the attitude indicator does not change through flight. For 3 hours, that plane is flying at the same elevation for 3 hours. And you and I know that the Earth, if the Earth was a globe, it would have curved away at the rate of 8 inches per mile squared. Okay. After more than 10 minutes, he should be flying into space, well above that 36,000 foot flight elevation. It's just simply mandatory by simple geometry. Oh, and by the way, Nathan, I think I've sent you all these proofs that I've done. I've done multiple proofs that show that per sea level, LA, California, and New York City, those are both at sea level, okay? By the globe, simple geometry, the distance midway between those two, but because it's 2,700 miles distance between LA and New York City, if you do the simple math, 8 inches per mile squared, the elevation between those two cities has to be more than 200 miles high, okay? When in reality, the elevation at Kansas City, Missouri is only 900 feet, okay? The simple geometry by simple math, Pythagorean theorem, fails. The globe fails again and again and again. There's simply no evidence of curve anywhere.
So you mean you never had to dip the front of your nose of your plane to account for that curvature?
You hear me laughing. I mean that. No, we do not dip the nose. Let me tell you this. The curve of the earth does not appear in any aviation discussion. It simply does not exist. There, on the contrary, the term the term straight and level, that is the term that describes once we take off and reach our flight altitude, for example, 36,000 feet, which is where most aircraft will fly. I mean, commercial aircraft, 36,000 feet, we fly straight and level, meaning we do our best not to dip the nose. Okay. Right. You see what I'm saying? The average pilot, when we hit autopilot or when we trim up our flight controls, we don't want the nose to dip. We want to maintain that elevation because everybody, this is elementary. If you're losing altitude, you're flying towards the ground, and you don't want that. We've got to maintain our elevation, our altitude when we're flying along. Okay, so to further highlight what you say there, do we dip the nose? No, not only do we not dip the nose, except in combat scenarios or needing to reach down and land somewhere. Okay, we keep the nose level, and actually a plane has to keep the nose elevated a little bit to keep the approach, the wind approach on the wings, the angle of approach on the wing.
It's slightly tipped up. It has to be slightly tipped up.
It's incredible. And now if we follow this discussion here, the dipping the nose is ridiculous. It's not only ridiculous, it's absurd. The flight community even has the specific term in all flight circles, straight and level, meaning you don't turn left or right, and you don't dip up or down. You fly straight at the same altitude.
So I got another question for you. Why is it that you guys don't have to account for the rotation on the Earth?
I'll tell you what, there is no Coriolis either. Okay, a lot of people will say, and a lot of people think they're smart when it comes to ballistics, and they say, well, if you're going to shoot a sniper bullet a mile away, you have to account for the rotation of the Earth. Well, if it's true for that bullet out of that rifle, well, guess what? It's true for a moving aircraft as well. Okay, guess what? No pilot ever, and I say that again, no pilot ever accounted for Coriolis effect when he's planning his flight routes. And in flight training alone, I flew thousands of miles in flight routes. Never once did I account for the rotation of the Earth. Let's say, for example, I'm taking off here, and I want to fly to a place that's east of me. Okay. Well, if I want to fly to someplace, to make the more clear, the example more clear, I want to fly from where I'm at north and west of me. Okay. Well, normally I calculate my route from the map. I get the heading, the compass heading to get there. Let's say it's 283. Okay. 283 for 17 miles. Okay. I fly it. I get in my aircraft and I fly there. It's always exact. Nathan, I was pretty good when it came to flying in math. I could put my skids down on an LZ within 3 seconds of when I said I was going to get there. Okay. Now let's imagine the Earth is rotating. If I was going to calculate my flight route to that rotating point, I would have to have a calculation in there that shows me how far is that point going to rotate towards me and to the west while I'm moving. It simply does not exist. It doesn't exist in flight community circles. It simply does not exist, Nathan. It's not only does it not exist, it's laughable. The average pilot has never even considered it. Okay. Now let's say I've flown 1,050 hours in a helicopter. Okay. That means that when I'm hovering my helicopter at a foot or 2 foot hover, the Earth, LA, California should have rotated towards me. I pick up in Alabama, the Earth rotates a little bit, and I set down, and I'm in California now. Guess what? It doesn't happen. Okay, that's laughable.
A friend put up a drone in front of me. He didn't have to make any account for the alleged spin
and you
of the Earth.
And you watched it hover right there in front of him.
Just hovered, just stationary, stayed fixed.
Exactly.
But I do have a question for you.
And I've got several more examples along that line, but we'll go ahead with what you want to talk.
Well, so this might be similar to what you're going to talk about, and I know this isn't your specialty, but if there was someone who worked in like missile development, would it be pretty much near impossible for them to design missiles and still believe that they're living on a spinning ball?
Yes. It would. Now, you can find a Navy missile instructor on YouTube that confirms the flat Earth.
So this is what I'm thinking.
The Navy's railgun shoots flat Earth. I mean, flat trajectory.
So if someone who, like, let's say worked for Raytheon and had been there for like 30, 40 years and, just been really, really in the mix of missile development, there's no way that they could believe they're living on a spinning ball, right?
You're right, but then again, it depends on what level of analysis he does. Okay, for example, my cousin works for Northrop Grumman Defense Satellites. He'll probably die knowing that he works with satellites. But you and I know satellites are a hoax. They're as much of a hoax as the moon landing is.
Right.
However, the powers that be have science. I mean, I say quotations, science. Okay. They've got it so narrowed down, and people work in such a tight community, they don't see the overall picture.
Yeah.
See where I'm going there?
Like, so compartmentalization.
Exactly. It's all compartmentalized. Nobody sees the entire picture. Okay. Right? Now, if we think that we fly over flat Earth, which we do, and I just proved it to you, imagine what a submarine does. He's closer down there. He has less of a elevation to work with underneath that water. Submarines they're more adamant about it than a pilot is, because their flight or their sailing corridor is that much more narrow. And as you and I know, the surface of water is always flat, as anybody knows. The submarines have a tighter corridor than planes do.
Right.
So they're even more adamant. When you go on YouTube and look at submarine flat Earth, you'll find it all there.
Man, it doesn't look good for the globe. That's all I gotta say.
Well, the globe is dead. The globe never even had life. And Nathan, I learned where the globe got its boost. I learned where globe became mainstream.
Tell me.
And it came with the Church of England. When the Church of England, Henry VIII, broke away from the Catholic, okay, he essentially made his own version of English Catholic. That's what the Church of England is, because he was just rebelling. He was just stepping out of Roman Catholic. But when he created his own church following, what was he going to do? He's going to follow the same Catholic principles, the same dogmatic, dictatorial Catholic principles, just under a new name. Okay, so the original Church of England, the scientists, and I quote scientists, the hoax scientists that brought us Copernicus, Newton, and Einstein, okay, they had been looking, excuse me, the flat Earth went nowhere, okay? Nobody would buy it until the Church of England forced it as dogma.
You mean the globe? No one
would. The globe.
Okay, because you said flat, but
I'm sorry. Yeah, I'm sorry. I meant the globe. Nobody would buy the globe because it's patently not scientific. Nobody in the world would buy the globe until the Church of England forced it in the schools and science and in the science textbooks. Why? Because they followed the Catholic model of dictatorial management of everything, church, state, education. That's where the globe became mainstream, is with the Church of England.
Which is
Interesting.
extremely telling that they already were scripturally completely lost. Because if they had
Okay.
any idea of the scriptures, even scripturally, they could not have proved the globe. Everything goes against it. There's over 240 plus verses that talk
Absolutely.
about
There
biblical
you go.
flat Earth cosmology. So
Yes, sir.
that's the
And
starting.
just because and let the Bible be a starting point. Yes, sir. And by the way, I'm just going to bring this up. My buddy and I, here where I live, he ran trade schools in Arizona. He knows all about charter schools, that is. We're going to start a school system based on the Bible, with the Bible as primary text.
Praise the Lord. Amen.
Yes, sir. With the Bible as our primary science textbook and history textbook. Okay? Imagine a school system devoted to the Bible with its primary text. Okay?
Praise the Lord.
That is our goal, and your curriculum will be part of it. We seek truth in all of its faces. Okay? And we and our first and primary foremost litmus test is, if we have a source of education, well, does it glorify God? Does it recognize God and the Bible as their text? If it does not, and this means the entire U.S. educational system, which rejects God, we will consider them suspect until we can find legitimacy in their teaching. Okay.
Amen.
Thank you. And we both agreed on that. It took us about 30 seconds to agree in all of that, because we seek truth. Now, when it comes to the Bible, here's 3 verses. For anybody who doesn't know your book and your doctrine, you've got 240 scriptures in there, and they're all relevant. I'm just going to bring up 3. Genesis chapter 1, verse 6. The firmament means rakia. Nathan, do you talk about rakia and what it means in the original Hebrew?
Yeah, I mean, you have to. You can't not get away from it. But go ahead.
Thank you. Rakia in the original Hebrew, firmament, I firmly believe, okay, and I mean, and pundit, there is a pundit, but I firmly believe that the whoever it was that translated the Bible, and this was King James people, they were already onto the globe earth and forcing the globe earth on us. When they used the word firmament, they used it to deceive the original Hebrew meaning of rakia. If you look up rakia, that's R-A-Q-I-A, in the original Hebrew, it means 3 things, 3 hard and fast meanings. Number 1, a solid and impenetrable. Number 2, clear. Number 3, covering. As if you got a cake bowl covering, an inverted bowl, or a bowl over a cake, a clear covering over a cake. Well, that's what's over the flat Earth. So the flat Earth environment, we live in a petri dish on a large scale. That's really what we live in, a covered petri dish.
And even if they did try to conceal it, obviously they didn't do a good enough job, because, God has so many different references through so many different authors, different books.
Again and again and again.
Praise the Lord, His word is preserved, and we're able to decipher what is the true meaning of the firmament.
They cannot disguise it. Isaiah 40:22 talks about the Lord. It is He that sitteth upon the circle of the earth. It means circle, not ball, not sphere. Circle of the earth. That's a 2-dimensional shape, the outline of a shape, okay? Now, let's go to Job 38:14. It says that the earth is like a stamp, it's like a seal, like a stamp seal, a circular seal, like they used in Isaiah's time, okay? The stamp rubber seal, and its features stand out like those of a garment. Well, if you lay a shirt down on a table, well, it's going to lay flat with the table, but it's going to have the collar and the buttons and the seams that stand out like features. Those are the mountains and valleys of the flat earth creation. And not only those 3 verses, and there are many others that we could talk about, there are countless verses that talk about the earth is established firm and immovable forever. Immovable means not rotating, not spinning, not chasing the sun around the universe. There is no space. There is no movement in the earth, period. Pretty simple.
Still and at rest.
Still and in rest. And, Nathan, we need to recognize the numerous experiments, and I mean legitimate, deliberate scientific experiments, starting with Airy's failure, 1871, Michelson-Morley, 1878 in Ohio, and then Sagnac, and then there's also Michelson-Gale, and then there's Sagnac in 1913. They proved that the stars rotate above the flat Earth once every 24 hours, a little less than 24. And then there's Michelson-Morley that proved the Earth patently does not move through space. And then there's Sagnac.
They did a lot of experiments, the same over and over throughout their whole lifetime.
Over and over. And numerous people
They didn't believe it. They couldn't believe it. They would not accept it. That's why they continued to test and test.
That's a good point. And they failed. Their thesis continuously failed. Their hypothesis failed again and again and again. And they tried it again and again and again. And they could never find movement. And that goes with the testing for the curve of the Earth. Okay, you go out to Oahu, you should not be able to see Oahu from Kauai. There should be more than a mile vertical separation between Oahu and Kauai. But little old ladies are seeing Kauai every day across from each other. It's incredible. Now, Nathan, here's another one. If you ever watch an airplane land from the cockpit, okay, you see the airstrip laid out in front of you. You dip your nose. That's the one time when you're flying. You dip your nose. You angle down and you land. Okay, now let's say you're 1,000 feet trying to land. Well, guess what? If the Earth was rotating, shouldn't it rotate 1,000 miles an hour to the west of you? Imagine landing on a north-south runway, and that thing's rotating away from you, and you have to turn your aircraft and go chase it. Imagine trying to chase your runway.
It would break the wheels off.
And there you go, exactly.
What would happen is the plane would completely go into a spin as soon as it hit the ground, and it would explode. It would hit the ground and it would explode because it would go into a spin.
Thank you, exactly. And you're not even a pilot. It doesn't take pilot sense to know these things.
No.
There you go. It just takes a little common sense. And I say non-NASA sense, non-hoax sense, non-relativity sense. And by the way, few people have ever said this. You've heard somebody say this, but I'm going to say this outright. Most people never heard anybody, never dreamed of it. But Einstein is a liar. Einstein is a deliberate liar. I can show you the scientific evidence that shows Einstein knew that he was lying when he wrote his fraudulent theory, and all he did was assume away the ether. And you cannot do that. You cannot assume something that's been well established for decades by the time you make your theory. That's the only way he could write anything. And right. Newton was a liar too. So there we go. Our scientific system, our school science system is based on lies. We're based on lies. It's time. I'm sorry?
Frauds and liars.
Frauds and liars. Our science system is based on frauds and liars. That's the only way the globe got its base, by the Church of England. That's the English version of Catholic Church, shoved it down the neck of science. That's the only way the globe became mainstream. Voila.
All right, cool. Let me get to the next question then here. Let's see here.
And we are rewriting history, Nathan. You know, when we say in this, we're rewriting, and we're defying.
I don't know if we're rewriting it, but I think we're rediscovering it.
Okay, thank you.
You know,
and that's a good point. We are defying the public institution. That's what we're doing right here. That's really what I mean to say.
Oh yeah, no, I see what you're saying. Okay, so the next question here is: have you ever witnessed clouds behind the sun?
That's a great question. Personally, I see the crepusculant rays. I have numerous photos of the crepusculant rays, where the rays come out at every angle from the sun and not parallel, which Eratosthenes assumed. The rays of the sun do not come parallel.
It blows me away that people will continue to refer to that experiment that happened over 2,000 years ago. They never met the guy, and if they ever wanted to go validate the experiment, go get 2 sticks and go put them out and verify against either a localized sun versus a curved Earth. Like, see how that works out. Go test it yourself. Don't just
go do it for yourself.
Yeah.
Yes. And that's the thing, Nate. They believe these things as if by faith. They believe these fraudsters, these hoaxsters, like you and I believe the Bible. But there is evidence behind the Bible. We can go out and prove what the Bible says, whereas relativity, we prove that it's a fraud, it's a hoax. Eratosthenes, like you said, it's a lie. We cannot reproduce it. And that's where we get true science, is trying this experiment again, reading about it, number one, knowing what it is, knowing that Copernicus even stated many times when he wrote when he published his theory, it was a theory again and again. He said, this is a theory, theory, theory. He actually did not want to publish it, but the powers that be, the mafia, forced him to publish that. He knew he was writing a lie, by the way. So at any rate,
Man,
have I ever seen clouds? I'm sorry.
So you never seen clouds, you said, behind the sun? Is that right?
Personally, I haven't spent the time to look at it. But you know what? I've seen plenty of photos. Plenty of people have evidence of it, and I've seen it on videos.
You know what? I was at Pastor Dean Odell's church this past Sunday, and he did a really great job of unveiling many government, university documents that show that these scientists, they know full and well that the Earth is stationary and flat. They cannot design planes or do calculations for any type of motion over the Earth without assuming a flat and stationary Earth. And so interesting.
And I've seen evidence of that before I learned what you're talking about. I've seen it myself. Yes.
And I plan to, with his help, I'm going to continue further researching it as I find these documents. I'm going to publish them on my website, and I'm also going to save them off, and I'm going to encourage many other people to do the same, because these are the types of evidences that if ever we had to go to a court of law, boom,
there it is,
right there. You know what I mean?
Oh man,
so it's really bad evidence against NASA and the lies that they've been pulling over everyone.
Exactly, and the moon hoax, the moon landing hoax. Yeah, that's enough.
It's baloney. So, but what's interesting is that he had stated, and he does talk about the ether, and he's going to get to that in another TV session.
Yes,
and how it is coming back into the scientific lingo, and people are starting to recognize it, as well as there's evidence that the beginning of the firmament, or whatever it is that we cannot penetrate past, or whatever it is, wherever maybe the firmament begins, or maybe even the ether, I'm not sure which comes first necessarily. Probably more so the ether, I would guess, and then you got the firmament. I don't know exactly, but whatever.
Well, the ether's within.
It's within the firmament. Okay, so then
of course it is.
So then the bottom of the firmament, the base, the top, the portion will be right overhead. The beginning of the dome, so to speak, may not be any more than approximately 70 to 75 miles above our head, potentially.
Potentially. Potentially. There are many who will say that the sun sits about 3,000 miles overhead. And by the way, if you want to look up Operation Fishbowl. Look up Operation Fishbowl. You ever looked that up?
I have a little bit. Yep. But I've also heard rumors that the sun potentially changes altitude or elevation.
Oh yeah, I sent you that video link for the magnetic flat Earth. That shows.
That. Yep.
Yes, that shows that every human being, from every vantage point, from Canada down to South America, observes the sun independently at the same longitude. That video shows systematically. I mean, they took years of measurements. Yep. Every vantage point on the Earth sees the sun from a different and independent measurement. The sun is independent for every person upon the Earth. And by the way, does that not reflect the love of God? The love of God is individually tailored for every person on the Earth. Isn't that incredible? Then the sun matches that scientifically. That's incredible.
It is. It's pretty wild. Okay, so let's see here. Next question here. Okay, how much jet fuel does a typical commercial plane need?
Oh, thousands of pounds per hour. Okay. Now, how do I know this? I flew turbine jet engines when I flew helicopters. Okay. The Army UH-60 Black Hawk has two. It operates off of two jet turbine engines that has its captured turbine pressure. In other words, a jet engine flies by pushing the jet exhaust out the back. Well, a helicopter turns that jet exhaust turns it upwards into a transmission. So the jet fuel exhaust turns a transmission, which is what turns the blades. In other words, it's a fan that catches the exhaust, okay, and it turns the blades of the helicopter. Let me tell you, I knew down to the pound per hour how many pounds per hour that aircraft was burning. Okay, now those are jet engines pushing a helicopter. Okay, well, when these jet when these jets are flying through the air, they're burning thousands of pounds per hour. The Army Black Hawk was about 1,300 pounds, and that was it per hour at rest. Okay, when we're pulling a big load, I mean, if we could pick up a 7,500 pound vehicle and carry it somewhere, we're burning 3,000 pounds per hour. Okay, so
Yeah, you can't waste any time in that kind of situation, I'm sure.
Okay, there you go. Okay, whenever an airplane or helicopter goes out on a mission, they either have to know where they're going to get fuel, where they're going, or they have to know how much of they're flying out and when they have to turn around and come back. You don't ever want to run out of fuel when you're flying, right? We know that. You're either going to end up taking a dirt nap, or everybody's going to know you had to land because you ran out of fuel. And then that's embarrassing. We don't ever want that to happen.
Now, I do have a question for you. Did you ever see the jet fuel hoax that was kind of going around in the flat Earth community? Is there any credibility to that, or is it complete nonsense in your mind?
Absolutely no credibility whatsoever. I can tell you, I watched my fuel gauge decrease as I went out flying. Okay, I smelled the fuel. I saw the. I inspected any pilot does inspects his aircraft. Okay, I watched my fuel gauges go from full down to zero. There was one point when I was at refuel, the warrant officer he told me, hey sir, check this out. There's something you're probably never going to see in your pilot career. Many pilots don't see this. While I was in line for refuel one time, both of my flashing low fuel lights were on, meaning I burned probably 3,000, 4,000 pounds of fuel on that flight. We flew so long. So that being said, yeah, those aircraft are burning fuel. The wings of an aircraft, the wingspan's what, 150 feet long, with all the volume in there. That's thousands of pounds of fuel. And Nathan, that was another question I was going to propose that you bring up. What about all these misleading stories in the flat Earth community and everywhere? Well, guess what? Here's the answer. The globists, the people who want to continue deceiving people, they know that they have lost the flat Earth. They know that we know. And so, but they're still attempting to seed out. They're still attempting to seed myth. They're seeding myth wherever they can.
Right.
And how do we overcome that? Let's go back to the fundamentals. Does a jet engine burn fuel? The answer is yes. Where else do you get your thrust? You don't get thrust without exhaust. That's what a jet fuel thrust is. They're burning so much fuel. As the fuel burns, it expands, and that's what the thrust is on an aircraft. I will agree this. Aircraft use an infinite, not infinitely, but extremely higher percentage of burn rate while they're taking off, because they have to generate such amount of speed in such a small amount of time while they're on that airstrip taking off. Once they get up to altitude, we know that the fuel rate levels off quite a bit, because it's like you're on cruise control. Let's say we're on a highway. We want to accelerate from 20 miles an hour to 60 miles an hour in about 10 seconds. Well, it takes a lot of fuel to get from 20 to 40. It takes a lot of fuel to get from zero on the airstrip to about 200 knots, which keeps those aircraft flying. It takes a lot of fuel to go from 0 to 200 knots real fast. So you burn a lot of fuel when you're taking off, getting up to altitude. But once you get up to flat altitude, then your burn rate tapers off quite a bit, and that's why they don't burn so much while they're at altitude. If you see what I mean?
Yeah, no, that makes sense. They're on more of a cruise control. Obviously, depending upon wind currents, I'm sure they have to adjust for that kind of stuff.
Voila. There you go. It makes complete sense, doesn't it?
Yeah.
When we go back to the fundamentals, Nathan, the average individual has enough sense to figure it all out. So don't believe anybody. And I say this to you or anybody else that I meet. There's only two people we should believe, Nate. And that's number one, the common sense that God has given us. Don't trust anybody except yourself and somebody else who follows God and is talking sense to you. Go back to the fundamentals and reason out the sense for ourselves. If we need some highfalutin, and I say nearly impossible to understand, relativistic equation to understand it, or for some weird technology like that, like some astrological observatory called Lucifer in Arizona in Mount Graham, we don't need it. If we can't understand it, then we don't need it. How about that? That's good advice. And God wants us to understand everything in our life. If we can't understand it, it's probably a hoax leading us astray.
Right, and if we need wisdom, he says in James 1:5 that he will
Let him ask of God.
yeah, he will give it abundantly and liberally to him who asks.
Exactly.
So
Yes, exactly.
okay, so the next question here: have you ever seen anything that you believe qualifies as a UFO?
Have I? Well, I've seen lights moving across like an airplane way up high, and we always think, "Wow, look at that! There's a satellite." But guess what? When they say satellite, they can say satellite because it's moving over the face of the earth. What is the definition of satellite? Okay, what is the definition of UFO? If you throw a rock and somebody sees it and they don't know what it is, that rock is flying through the air. That's an unidentified flying object. Okay.
It could be a football that's like got a glow surface to it. You know, you can throw it in the air
Exactly.
and someone not know from far away, but it's just a football. But they could say UFO, right?
There you go. We don't know what it is. And UFO is actually a technical term. In aviation, UFO, I don't know what that is, but it's flying through the air, unidentified. We don't know what it is. It's almost a technical term, okay? So when it comes down to it, oh, by the way, I almost had a drone. I almost had a drone strike. A drone flew about 20 feet, 20, 30 feet above me one time. I mean, over my head while I was flying a helicopter one time on a military training scenario. Interesting. That caused a little bit of a fluff. Well, there's a Marine Corps aircraft flying at 300 feet, and then my aircraft was flying about 70 feet, and then about midway between those two, about 20 to 30 feet between us two, this Army drone comes flying right between us. That's no good.
Dang.
So that was an unidentified flying object because it wasn't supposed to be there.
At least initially it was.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Right. So now I'm just going to throw this in here. Anytime there's a funky looking aircraft, it's real. Guess what? It's made by real people and piloted by real people as well. Okay. There is nothing new under the sun. Right? Didn't Shakespeare say that? There's nothing new under the sun.
That's just part of the psyop.
It's part of the psyop.
To see that there's an alien invasion coming. So they have
yes.
aircraft.
The alien invasion. Yes. Look up Project Bluebeam. Yep, I'm sure you're familiar with that. Now, here's another one for you. Look up I'm saying this for everybody else, and maybe you, Nathan, unless you're aware of it. Are you familiar with the Haunebu? Haunebu. It's a German aircraft called the Haunebu.
I don't think so. No, it's new to me.
Oh yeah. If you want to look up the origin of aliens, okay, I say quote aliens, look up Haunebu. Just go to Google search and type Haunebu. Look up and read about Haunebu and then type images. The Haunebu is a German circular wing aircraft. They developed it. They made 4 or 5 different versions of them, each of them bigger and more efficient than the previous. Okay, they had Haunebu 1. I think they got up to Haunebu 4, maybe 5. Imagine a stovepipe-shaped aircraft with a circular wing around it.
And again, how do you spell that again?
Haun, like November, E, Bravo, uniform. Haunebu.
Gotcha.
Okay? Simple Google search. I've done it myself. The more you look through there, the more you're going to realize the strength of the German economy before the evil empire destroyed them. If you really want to look up German economy, look up The Myth of German Villainy. Is a book by Benton L. Bradbury. He's probably not watching, but he's still living. I'm in contact with him. I send him emails every now and then. The Myth of German Villainy, number 1, and number 2, The Creature from Jekyll Island. Those are 2 fabulous books you need to read if you want to learn why they destroyed Germany. World War I and 2 should never have happened. Okay, now let's go to aliens, and I only bring that up because aliens, the alien quote story, it derived from World War I and World War II. After they destroyed Germany immorally, okay, during using World War II, they found German technology. By the way, did you know that the Germans had developed? They were the first to develop jet aircraft, okay, jet-powered aircraft, and they were able to power jet fuel or jet aircraft using coal. The Germans had made a coal dust fired jet aircraft. That's how technologically advanced German industry was and still is to this day.
No,
Okay?
that makes sense. Yeah.
Okay, got it? Got it? That's why this destroyed Germany. Now, the Germans were flying the Haunebu. Imagine a stovepipe shaped aircraft with people inside of it. I mean, this is big. Okay? Now compare our airplanes with the straight wings sticking out. Okay? How wide are those wings? They're 5-10 feet wide on an airliner, right? And they just stick out straight out to the side. They're perpendicular.
Right.
Now, imagine the lifting surface of a 360-degree spinning disc all around that stovepipe-shaped cylinder aircraft. Okay? Okay, got it? 360 degrees instead of a few degrees of the wings.
Right.
Okay? And now, the modern example is a helicopter, but remember, a helicopter has 4 blades, not a continuous surface.
Right. Right.
Okay?
Right.
Now, in your mathematical mind, imagine the percentage efficiency of a 360-degree lift versus a 5-degree lift, even from a helicopter. You see where I'm going there?
Yeah.
And that is the design function behind the Haunebu aircraft. And that, my friend, imagine you go over there and you find a Haunebu aircraft. You steal it and you hide it, and then you seed out in public just like they seeded the idea of jet engines don't use fuel, they use compressed air. Well, where does the compressed air come from? Okay,
right.
Number one, okay, got it. They're seeding the myth of fuelless aircraft. Well, what they did with the aliens, they seeded the myth of aliens based on anybody who might have seen the Haunebu aircraft, and based on the myth of the Haunebu aircraft that nobody will ever see because they stole it and they buried it at Area 51. Area 51 is real, and they don't let anybody in there because that's where all the test aircraft fly, and nobody can come see them because all these aircraft around the world, they're real, flown by real people, but secret. They don't want anybody to see it.
And the alien conspiracy continues.
And voila! And Project Bluebeam, and from what I read, Project Bluebeam, what they're trying to do, and Nathan, you've seen it yourself. Anybody who watches the news, they know that other countries are starting to recognize and publish official, quote, alien sightings.
Oh, yeah.
UFO sightings,
Yep.
Okay?
Yep.
That's all part of Project Bluebeam. They're trying to build this myth of aliens, and eventually, okay, I'm going to cut to the long story short. What they're going to do, they're going to try and get the public believing on this bandwagon of aliens coming to visit, aliens and alien spacecraft. And what they're going to do is trying to get a hologram version of a Jesus Christ returning. And they're going to man-made creation of a returning Jesus Christ. If enough people will believe it, they'll believe in a man-made hologram of Jesus Christ, and which is going to be completely false. Nobody knows that Jesus Christ is returning. When he does return, we will all know it from the Spirit of God, which will make it plain and manifest.
Absolutely. We will know for certain.
Exactly.
Those who actually know him. Those who know him.
Those who know him will know. And the fraud will be apparent. Whereas this Project Bluebeam is trying to manipulate the alien myth and the demon satanic UFO myth to make it look like they have control over even Jesus Christ, and they're going to use a hologram to do it. So what I'm saying here, I'm not sure how they're going to do it. I'm not sure when they're going to do it. They can't do it now because not enough people believe in UFOs. And for that matter, nobody's ever going to believe in UFOs. It's a pipe dream for them. Project Bluebeam will only succeed if enough people lend themselves to this myth. And right now, I'm going to do everything I can. I'm sure you're doing everything you can to prevent this myth. Believe in Jesus Christ, not in UFOs or aliens.
Yeah, and in part, that's one of the main reasons why it's important to understand flat Earth. Because if we don't understand flat Earth, we can't even get to the fact that there could be even an alien deception. Because even many Christians now even believe that there are UFOs and aliens that are in them,
Yes,
and that there's other planets and other worlds. In fact,
exactly.
even in my children's Focus on the Family Clubhouse magazine that we got a subscription to, they're the ones who cued me on it when they were looking through the magazine. At the very back, there's a cartoon that says degrees of Kelvin. It's 2 pages on the very back. And I've done a video on this. The first one that they pointed out to me, my children, showed that the human was leading the alien into a prayer to believe on Jesus Christ. And then the second episode that came out, the subsequent episode that came out after that in the next magazine, was the alien being water baptized by the human.
What? And they're teaching kids this?
Focus on the Family.
And that's incredible. There it is. It's a blatant lie. That's pure indoctrination, isn't it? There they are seeding that myth to the kids. They're seeding the myth everywhere they can. And my goal with this, truthuniversities.org, that's our website, by the way. I'll have it up pretty soon, truthuniversities.org. And Flat Earth is going to be one of our main components, by the way. Okay, the seeking of truth and the dismantling of all the myths. Okay, I hold 2 master's degrees, soon to be PhD. One could say that I have a pretty good grip on how they seed the myth in the quote academic schools and universities. Okay, my goal is to unravel all those myths and point back to all history and all studies and all of my experience for 22 years as a professional. All of my experience shows that there is only one reliable truth in the world, and that is God. Okay, period. There is God and the science of God and none other. Voila.
Amen, brother. I'm super excited about it. This is wonderful. Do you have a launch date for that yet? Are you still working that out?
Well, we're working that out. My buddy's excited about it. It just turned out that he sent me an email. We're in contact today right now. The PhD I'm studying, the master Jedi of it, just per se, the master PhD, he lives right now here in town with us. I mean, we all live within a 2-mile radius of each other.
Oh,
so
wonderful.
we've got a meeting planned for Monday. And here's the deal. My buddy Jeff, he's started 5 different charter schools. Okay, he knows how to do this. So whenever I asked him, so what should we do? Should we have an academy with buildings and have teachers, instructors? He said, no, we'll probably run it initially we'll run it as a computer room where people can come in and study. Maybe
online.
We'll do lectures, online study, yes. and lectures,
yep.
And maybe have mobile lecturers. Okay,
oh, that's where
I live. Yes, I live in the Salt Lake City area, and that's where we 3 live. And so we're going to involve the PhD, the owner of this PhD program, and he's certified in the state of Utah, by the way. We're going to partner with him at his level. He's going to be part of us. The Flat Earth community is going to be part of this through me. And so, and what with the launch date, we don't have a launch date yet, but we're in the progress of building this thing. And I say this again because Jeff, he knows how to do this. He's done it 5 times. He holds a master's degree in education administration. He knows how to do this. My buddy with a PhD who runs the PhD, it's an online PhD, by the way. It's a correspondence type PhD. So those 2 guys know how to do this. And I'm full of brute force and ignorance. Give me a shovel, I know how to use it. So we can do this once we get all the dots in place. It's easy to connect them.
Yeah, and of course, as you make further progress, I'll be happy to do whatever I can to promote all of your work. So I'm really excited to partner with you guys, and that's wonderful.
Excellent, thank you. Now let me tell you, these 2 guys. Jeff is kind of lukewarm on the Flat Earth because it's brand new to him. Who researches it, right? Only the curious, the intellectually curious, are the only ones who will ever pick up the Flat Earth because it takes time to research, and most people are too interested in making $1 and coming home and seeing the family, right? It takes time to research Flat Earth, right?
It does. It takes a lot of time.
Now, my other buddy with a PhD, he's adamantly opposed to Flat Earth. But that's only because he's never studied it. Okay, so what if he has a PhD? He's a PhD in economics. I don't know how much science he's studied, And if he did, it was shoved down his neck. He studied, memorized it, take the test, and moved on. He doesn't care about physics. He doesn't study it. He doesn't analyze it. All I have to do is show these guys the basics, and they cannot deny it, period. There is no evidence of a globe. There never has been. So what we're, like you said, we're not rewriting history. We are rediscovering history to those who have never seen it. And I was in that community.
Yep, and so all we were.
we all were. And like I said, the Church of England, let's go back to history. The Church of England has deceived us all. The Church of England just became the Church of the United States government when they adopted their government and they made their own, okay? And, no, Nathan, excuse me. The first text of the schools in this country were the Bible back then, okay? And then the evil ones, the evil powers, have corrupted our very school system, just like they corrupted our government. It's time to unravel the deceit.
Yep, and the Bible.
And that's where we're at.
The Bible has got to be the basis of it for sure. Because
again, let's return to the basics.
I think right now what we've experienced in the last almost 500 years, especially really strong since the early 1900s, because I think there was a big push for flat Earth revival in
there was
across the world, and I think that when the Treasury got established and they killed off the gold standard in 1933, and then the war started.
You mean the Federal Reserve?
Sorry, Federal Reserve. That's what I meant.
Yeah, that's what you mean.
That's what I meant. The Federal Reserve, and then
gold and they gained control over everything.
And then the wars back to back. I think all of that stuff that happened in such a short, condensed.
Of course it did.
That just collapsed everyone's morale, and the only thing that they could do was hope to get a job to take care of their family. They were just struggling to get by. They could care less what the shape of the earth was. So while everyone was distracted with just getting through their everyday, day-to-day life to feed their family, their children who are in school, they can work, are being indoctrinated, and they don't have time to go ahead and counter this stuff and say, yeah, that's not true, and then they try to go to the school system. I mean, they don't have time.
They're trying to survive.
Yeah. So
Nathan,
it's all history.
Go ahead. I'll hold my thought. It's all in the history, and that's where it is. If we want to understand something, we have to understand the history and origin and the reason it came to be. Okay? Yes, we just discovered the origin of the globe in modern academia, and it is the Church of England. The Church of England forced it as dogma down the throats of British science, of English science. Then that's the only place it ever gained foothold. Okay? That's the only place anything ever gets foothold is when the government forces it. Aliens, global warming, what else? All these HIV and AIDS. Oh, by the way, Nathan, I can show you the physiological proof that AIDS and HIV is a fake virus. It's been fake from the origin.
You ever researched Dr. Horowitz before?
That name sounds familiar. In what respect?
He did a book on exposing the hoax of AIDS and HIV. So I'm along the same line as you. I don't believe that they're real.
Absolutely.
And if they were anything at all, it was purely manufactured and not exactly what they created was what we were told it was.
Absolutely. Let me tell you this. Would you mind if I go into this for about 30 seconds?
Go for it, man. You got the floor.
Okay. All right. Well, first of all, the Great Depression, remember, the Great Depression did not happen until after the Federal Reserve came to power.
Yeah, because they had to be set up to take everyone else's possessions away.
To control the amount of currency available, right?
That's right.
Let me tell you this. The Great Depression was statistically created as one works out an algebraic equation. I've lost your audio.
Oh, just like our monetary system right now is being controlled by AI?
Absolutely. And the Great Depression was the vastly successful, the more wildly successful than they could have imagined. And let's say the savings and loan crisis in the 80s, the year 2000 crash, and then the 2008 real estate crash.
Right.
Those were all scientifically engineered.
Oh yeah.
And that is my life study, and it all comes from that.
Aren't we due for another one pretty soon?
When and whenever they want.
Isn't it every 10 or 15 years, somewhere in that frame? They've got to reset, so they got to create another bubble. And my best guess, and I don't know what you think, I think is it's going to be the student loan. I think the student loans is going to be the bubble that's going to burst, and it's going to be pretty detrimental. So, but what do you think? What do you think will be the next bubble?
Well, you know what? I haven't thought of it, so I don't have an answer for you.
Okay.
But I'll tell you, I've been saying this for months now. When is North Korea going to open up? As soon as all the 5 different players, and I mean Russia, China, South Korea, Japan, and U.S., once they figure out who's going to get profit from all the banks and McDonald's and
that's right.
department stores,
just like what they did with marijuana production, right?
No, exactly right.
It's demonized, and then oh wait a minute, what about the healing properties with CBD oil and all these other things? Oh, okay.
Voila.
Well, we already own that kind of stuff, and it's regulated, so we're also going to regulate that aspect too.
Exactly. And Cuba's no different, by the way. And now with this, all of this. Oh, and by the way, they've been secretly behind the screen working out who's going to get what percentage, or who's going to operate in which sector of North Korea, right? Because we've got 5 big players there, okay? And meanwhile, like a mongoose distracts a cobra when he attacks it with his tail, they've been holding out the threat of nuclear weapons from North Korea to deceive the public. Meanwhile, they're making all their under the table deals and agreements upon who's getting the profit once they open up North Korea. Right.
Speaking of nuclear war, is that a hoax or is that real, Rob?
It's a hoax. It's a hoax. And if you want to look up Galen Windsor, I'm going to spell that Galen, the name Galen, last name Windsor, W-I-N, like November, W-I-N-S-O-R. If you look up Galen Windsor nuclear hoax on YouTube, tens of hours of Galen Windsor talking about how he was on the original nuclear physics design team. They would walk up to a big hunk of plutonium, walk up to it. It was no more. It wasn't producing enough heat anymore, so it was smoking, a big hunk of smoking metal. They would walk up to it and kick it into the pool for 5 years. Okay, for 5 years. Let me tell you. So now the question is, what happened to Hiroshima and Nagasaki? Let me tell you what happened to those 2 cities. What was Japan's construction then? Wood and paper, right? Firebombing is what happened to Hiroshima and Nagasaki. No different than what they did to Germany when they immorally destroyed more than 160 German cities, starting with Dresden and Nordhausen and many others, using firebombs. The Japanese knew that they could not defend their country against firebombing. In order to preserve their civilians and prevent from happening to them what the Allies did to German civilians, burning them in their beds. I say that, burning them in their beds with all the hate and spite that I can muster against the U.S. and British Air Force for burning German civilians in their beds. The Japanese government, the powers that be at that time, knew that their people would burn in their beds unless they surrendered. And that is why Japan surrendered, because they did not want their people to burn like they burned the German civilians. Read the book, The Myth of German Villainy, and you will understand what I'm talking about. By the way, I'm a specialist when it comes to POW suffering. I'm a graduate of the Army's Special Operations POW training school that lasted 3 weeks in the outback North Carolina. I know what that means. I'm a specialist when it comes to that topic. So I've studied POW and brutality and revolutions around the world, around the flat Earth world. Okay, so that's the long answer or expression. That's the short answer of, is nuclear weapon a hoax? Yes, it is. It's absolutely a hoax. There is no such thing as a nuclear bomb. Nuclear energy will heat water phenomenally well, but it doesn't explode.
Not as a bomb. If you want, not as a bomb.
Not as a bomb. Yes, exactly. Okay. So what was it? I was on something. I went back to the connection between Federal Reserve and the Great Depression. There was something else I was going to go into, but keep talking.
Okay, well, I got another
Next
question for
question.
you.
Yeah.
Next question is, what do you think about Admiral Richard Byrd's explorations to Antarctica, his testimony of that experience, including his claim of massive amount of land and resources?
Good one. When you said Admiral Byrd, that's the first thing that comes to mind. When he says there's an amount of land beyond Middle America, bigger than the United States, well, what's he talking about? Middle America was the name of an outpost there in what they claim is Antarctica. Okay, that was their base camp, for example. Okay, he says there's a mass of land beyond Middle America, bigger than North America. Well, if you look at the globe and go beyond Middle America, that is the middle of the Indian Ocean. Okay, he says that there's a mass of land bigger than the United States in the middle of the Indian Ocean. And number one, if the Earth is a globe, he's talking gibberish. Okay, if you listen to what he says, and by the way, Admiral Byrd was a secret Mason. Okay, he was a professional military liar.
Right.
I'll say that again. He was a Mason, meaning he was a professional liar.
Just like
Okay.
Neil deGrasse Tyson and
Oh my gosh, he's a lying clown.
Bill Nye, all these guys.
Bill Nye, yeah,
Just a different generation.
They're like the Three Stooges.
Yeah, the same.
Okay, they're the Three Stooges of the globe. I'm going to give more credit to Admiral Byrd. He spent time in the Navy, but he somehow got magically promoted to a general sooner than anybody else, or an admiral sooner than anybody else. You know, when I was in Africa, one of the counterparts was the son of the president. Somehow he became a general, or I'm sorry, maybe a colonel after only 6 years in the army. In
What's
that country's
the average
army.
time before coming a colonel? Typically?
Colonel, more than 20.
Ooh, 6, huh?
It's
That's
funny how
laughable.
the president's son becomes a colonel. They call him the magic colonel, right? He's the magic colonel,
sure
right?
thing.
You know, I personally, when I saluted that guy, I didn't like it. I felt personal reluctance. Who is this guy?
Who
I'm
wouldn't?
saluting him.
Who wouldn't?
He's been in the military less than I have, right?
Mhm.
Exactly. You know, lieutenants would salute me, and I respect those guys because they're kicking their own ass, trying to learn and progress. Then they had respect for the system, right?
Yeah.
This guy wearing colonel's rank, he showed his disgrace for the system. He mocked the system. How could I salute that?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
No, that makes
There
sense.
you go. Yeah, exactly.
Speaking
So
of-
how does Admiral Byrd become an admiral sooner than anybody else? And somehow, how does he get command of this magic expedition that, first of all, they go to the North Pole and they discover that there's really nothing there.
Sure.
There's just a bunch of water.
Nothing
And then all of
there.
a sudden, he's doing multiple expeditions. He's in command of 4,500 personnel, multiple combat ships and aircraft. How does he magically get command?
He's like Elon Musk.
Oh, thank you. Exactly. He's no different than these modern. He's like NASA before there was NASA.
Yep.
Exactly right.
Yep.
It's funny how NASA gets created very soon after he has a mysterious dying incident.
Yeah.
Did you know that Admiral Byrd had a mysterious death incident?
I think
like everybody else.
What was
Yeah.
the alleged death for him, as you recall?
Well, he did his planes flew into the firmament.
Oh.
His planes, yeah, 20. I'm going to say this: if you just research Admiral Byrd
Yeah.
and research everything you can about Operation High Jump,
Yep.
okay, and because that was the numerous, at least 3 expeditions that explored the quote Antarctica, which is an ice ring 200 feet tall around all the oceans. Okay,
Mhm.
and by the way, when the Bible says, I'm going to go back to linguistics. When the Bible says the 4 quarters of the earth,
Yep.
when it says the 4 corners of the earth,
Yep.
that is a translation.
Yep.
When you look up corner in the original Hebrew,
Yeah.
it means quarter, Quarter.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yep.
It doesn't mean the 90-degree corner. It means the 4 quarters, meaning northeast, west, and south, referring to the winds. You got the north wind, the east wind, the west wind, the south wind. When the Bible says the four corners of the earth, it's a figurative expression, which means the four cardinal headings, the four cardinal directions, meaning the entirety. It's an expression that means the entirety. It's equivalent to saying the entirety of God's green earth. That's all it means. It's not pointing to four specific 90-degree corners. That's what fools a bunch of people.
Now, what's interesting about that is if you like, let's say you take my face, right? Let's say it's mostly circular in shape, right?
It's the circle of the face.
Right, circle of the face. So we've got a line from top to bottom here.
Voila.
Line from side to side. Dead center, you could make a case, geometrically speaking, for four corners that meet at the center. Could you not?
There you go. There's your four corners. Exactly.
Four corners
there
made
you
of
go.
4 quarters of a circle.
The four quarters, right? The 4 quarters of the circle, of the disc, right? And of course we can have the quarter of a sphere of the disc. You divide it in 4. There's 1/4 of it. There you go.
Check this out.
Great.
This is the Earth Now app. Anyone can go download this on your phone. I just want to show you. Check
Notice it's not moving.
No, well, check what's. This is.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, what are those jagged edges?
Yeah, you would think that they had to try to square a circle almost.
Because they can't prove it, Nathan. They cannot prove it. Those liars.
They have no data at the bottom.
There is no data. Exactly. They can't. There's nothing, because they don't want to show what's there, Nathan. Because that hole and that's what you remember what was it the polar, what do they call it, there was something in global warming that they called it. I'll remember it here in a little bit. But it was this vacuum of dead air over the South Pole, made out of bad gas or something, right? It'll come to mind here in a little bit. Yeah. But they seem to use the North Pole because there is no such thing. Back to Admiral Byrd. If we're sitting on Middle America, and where he says
the North Pole, you say?
There is no south. There's no such thing as North Pole or South Pole. There is no pole to the Earth.
Yeah,
that comes to.
But as far as the center of the Earth, so to speak, could be termed the North Pole. I see what you're saying. Okay.
Yeah, the center. There is no magnetic pole.
Right.
Period.
Right. As a magnetic force.
Okay. Yes.
And well,
the magnetic pole, when you play your compass and it swings north, there's just a bunch of iron ore in northern Canada. That's all it is. Period.
Oh, really?
And it pulls the compass. That's all it is.
Just for Canada?
That's it. Canada has a bunch of islands up there, right? And most of them are deserted, barren desert, right? Oh, by the way, if you look in some of the quote Mars photos, you will see crabs, because crabs on the surface of the Canadian islands. That's all it is. It's freaking hilarious. You'll see Canadian crabs in the Mars photos, because that's where it is. That's where they have the quote Mars photos are up there in northern Canada, because there's nobody there, right?
Yeah.
Anyway, if you pull out your compass and it's going to swing north, that's because that little piece of metal filament is attracted to that iron ore in northern Canada. It's not a north or south thing. It's just it draws all metal to it. Right. There's not a south pole, because if there was, there would be a south-seeking metal. But think about this: if you're on the west coast, north is one direction. Okay, it's pointing to that iron mass. But if you go on the east coast in North Carolina, you've got another angle of north. It's called the GM angle. You've got the grid magnetic angle. Have you ever studied navigation where you got the GM angle?
Nope, not so.
Right. And I think it's 7-degree difference in California, and it's only a 2 to 4 degree difference in North Carolina. Okay. And then so the difference there, north south is a different direction in both of those locations. And as you and I, and what it shows that there is no south-seeking arrow.
Right,
okay,
of course. Yep.
South is just the opposite of that north.
North is exactly. Yep, that's true.
And we use that north-seeking magnetic mass up there because it's close enough to the center of the navigational circle of the Earth.
Now, do you know of anyone who's ever made it to the North Pole or even tried, not North Pole, but you know what I mean, the North, the center of.
Plenty have tried, but as far as I know, one cannot travel there either
We're not
because the
allowed.
South Pole, we're not allowed to travel there either. Okay, so there's a lot of talk about it, but you
What
and
do you
I,
think would be more interesting to discover and investigate, the North or the South? If you had to only choose one, which would you go
oh,
for?
by far the South.
Why?
Okay, because back to what fake Admiral Byrd, Magic Admiral Byrd said. Okay, Magic Admiral Byrd, Magic Captain Byrd. Okay, how did he get Admiral so fast? Because he's a Mason. Okay, how did he get control of all that vast armada and go explore the South Pole? Let me tell you, I served in the military for 22 years. Military expeditions only happen during wartime, and they only happen to go fight the quote enemy. I did an entire, Nathan, you're going to love this. I wrote a 49-page single-spaced thesis comparing the expedition to go capture the Zulu king. His name was Cetshwayo at the time. The Zulu Wars in 1879.
Mm-hmm.
That was so astronomically expensive. They ended it abruptly. They ended it prematurely because it cost so much to put the British expedition in the southern African region and capture him. And let me tell you, they captured him, brought him back to see Queen Elizabeth, and the infrastructure fell apart. Everything turned to mass mayhem. Everybody started axing each other and taking slaves of each other. The British, within 1 year of capturing the Zulu king, they wished they had never set foot in Zululand. They tried to put him back and set him back up as chief again, but guess what? The 13 different sub-chieftains, they said, oh no, he's not coming back. We own this now. And we own each of our little piece, and he ain't taking it back from me. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
There was an alliance, and they ruled sub-Saharan South Africa region, South Africa, Zimbabwe region, like the U.S. runs the United States today. The Zulus ran South Africa and Southern Africa as efficiently, arguably more efficiently, because they were brutal dictatorship. Okay, the British wish they had never set foot there.
Yeah, because
I'm getting at,
they went from one head to 13 heads.
Yeah, oh, exactly.
How can we Nathan, this?
Exactly. And what's going on in Afghanistan? Is it any different?
No, it's a mess.
I'll tell you, there's one thing coming out of Afghanistan. Has there been any order established in Afghanistan? Oh, no, it's worse now than it was in 2001.
Yeah.
I'll tell you, there's one thing coming out of Afghanistan, which is very profitable for certain individuals. Opioid epidemic. That's what's coming out of Afghanistan. 99% of the opium behind the opioid epidemic is coming out of Afghanistan.
Wow.
In the form of legal drugs. Got it?
Quote unquote legal, which is not necessarily lawful.
There's a reason they call him George Poppy Bush. George Bush 1, they call him George Poppy Bush because he was in CIA running heroin out of Afghanistan in the 1980s under the guise of fighting against the Soviets.
Yeah.
And the Mujahideen.
That's a whole
with Bin Laden.
Story, but yeah, that is a mess.
Exactly. That's another story. I'm sorry. Back to Admiral Byrd, and I remember what I was gonna mention what AIDS is caused by. AIDS is not a homosexual disease. AIDS is not a male disease or a female disease. Let me tell you, the male testicles are not covered by the male immune system. What that means is the male immune system cannot operate within the male testicles or the scrotum. Why? Because it would kill the sperm. Okay? What that means, there are documented cases, and Nathan, I'm talking about scientific research here. I am a scientific analyst, or how about a scientific research analyst? This thought occurred to me. I've been thinking about this for years, since at least 2009, okay? I went to numerous scientific journals, and I read about how much immunity does the male scrotum have? And it has none. Why? Because it's got to support the sperm. Otherwise, other than that, the white blood cells would kill the sperm. Okay?
That makes sense.
Okay, got it? There have been documented cases of bacteria and viruses surviving and living in the testicles, in the semen, therefore, for a full year and a half after all symptoms have gone away in the body.
Wow.
I'll just let that percolate
They can
there.
become a carrier unknowingly for
thank you.
almost a year.
Exactly. The semen is contagious, in other words. Let's just say it right there. The semen is a carrier. And we're speaking objectively here. We're talking about science. Flat Earth is pure science, okay? We're talking science. Notice, you brought up the Federal Reserve. Thank you, because when you did, that allows me to talk all of my military history. When you say that, I get to talk about World War I, World War II. And by the way, the Civil War in this country was not a civil war. It was a war of bankers against the immensely powerful immensely powerful Southern agrarian cotton economy. That's the nature, that's the origin of the Civil War. It wasn't North versus South. It wasn't liberate the slaves. The slaves were already liberated in the South. Slavery is also a myth. Slavery is a myth as big as the Holocaust, by the way. The Holocaust is a myth, and I have the forensic science behind that, by the way. Okay? Voila. But anyway, back to the semen. The semen is a carrier, as you pointed out. Okay? Now, if the semen is naturally a carrier, well, what about the uterus? How much immunity is designed into the universe?
Similar
the
to
uterus.
It can't be much because you have your similar issues, right?
Exactly. Well, hold on a sec there. If the semen is a natural carrier and it's naturally contagious, but the uterus has to by nature admit the semen, okay, as a normal function. Think about it. If the semen is contagious, yet the uterus never gets infected from the semen, then how much immunity is naturally there?
In the uterus?
Yes.
Well, I would think that there's not much of any, but are you thinking that there is?
Well, think about it. The female goes through a normal monthly cycle. How doesn't that have a lot of bacteria there? The vagina is theoretically, it's an open wound. It has to defend itself from the external environment. Think about it. How much immunity has to exist there?
Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah, obviously, yes. It's got to be extremely immune within itself, right?
Exactly. Now think. It only makes complete logical sense. If the semen, by nature, by God's design, okay, is a carrier, well, the uterus has to have built-in immunity.
Right.
Because it's only natural, God's nature, God's designed nature for the semen to enter that uterus. Okay? The uterus has a built-in immunity to it. Okay? Now, because on a woman's monthly course, there has to be immunity built in there. Okay? Because there's all kinds of foreign objects going in, up, down, and around. Okay? The uterus has all kinds of immunity built into it. The semen is contagious. Now, Nathan, let's go even a more obvious aspect. Let's talk about the rectum. Okay? The rectum is non-sexual. Male or female, it's a rectum. Male or female, it's the same rectum. And it's a one-way shoot, right? It's not designed to have anything enter it.
Right.
Let me ask you this, Nathan. How much, let's say a foreign body gets into the rectum, how fast any foreign bacteria gets into the rectum, how fast is that going to get inflamed? Do you know anybody who's ever had a rectal infection? I lost audio.
Somehow. Oh yeah, no, I don't think anyone would talk to me about that.
Yeah, right. Well, let me tell you, I had a buddy when I was at an army base. He got sick for weeks, like a good couple of weeks, and it wasn't going away. Well, he had an infection on his rear end, on his hind end. Yeah. Well, he went to the doc, and they analyzed. It was a cyst on his rear end, on his gluteus maximus. Okay. We get those right every now and then. It's an infection, right? They told him, that if that thing was half an inch away from his rectum, from his rectal wall, okay, they told him if that thing had punctured his rectal wall, he would have been dead in 2 days.
Whoa.
Because of the bacteria. If a foreign bacteria gets into the rectum, there is practically no immunity designed into the rectum.
Right.
The rectum is designed to handle bacteria from the intestine and none other.
Mm-hmm.
What does the Bible say? Man shall not lie with man as with another man. It is an abomination.
So there's
It's
obviously a health concern associated with it, aside from other things.
Well, okay. Do you see what I'm saying? The
Right.
rectum has almost no immunity designed into it. However, comma, the scrotum and the testicles and the semen are natural carriers of disease. It's a known biological fact.
Right.
And how do I know this? I'm not an MD. I went and I researched a bunch of articles, and that's how I found it. Research has told me that, Nathan. I asked my wife. My wife is a nurse practitioner studying PhD mental health. Guess what? She did not know that.
So you ran it by her, and she says, yeah, that makes sense.
She said it makes sense. It makes complete sense. She had not studied it because she's not a reproductive systems specialist, okay? But anybody, we could ask any MD who's got reproductive specialty. Guess what? He will confirm what I'm saying. And by the way, you're a researcher. I'm a researcher. I'm not saying this unless I confirmed it with 2 or 3 different sources. Okay, the testicles are a known carrier of bacteria and viruses. What happens when any known carrier penetrates a known deficiency of immunity?
You got voila infection.
Okay, exactly. And how fast does it happen? Absolutely fast, thank you, instantaneously, because the rectum, it harbors bacteria. There's bacteria throughout the intestine, all the way throughout the rectum. It's an incubator of bacteria.
So the moral of the story is, just follow God's law.
Thank you. That's the moral. The long story short of it, AIDS is neither a male disease nor a female disease. It's not a disease at all. It's a disorder caused not by homosexuality. It's caused by anal penetration. It's caused by anal penetration by the penis. AIDS is an anal sex disorder. That's what it is. It's an anal sex disorder. And by the way, who has most of the anal sex disorder? Homosexuals do. And notice, AIDS went from 10 to 10 million overnight in the 80s. Nobody really talks about AIDS anymore because, and Nathan, here's another thing. If you research AIDS, just type AIDS debate. Just go to Google and type AIDS debate. You will see pages and pages, hundreds of docs. Not one doctor, not one medical professional will sign his name and say that HIV causes AIDS. There is absolutely no link between HIV and AIDS because they faked the HIV to make a fake cause of AIDS, whereas everybody in the community knows that AIDS is only caused by contaminated semen entering the rectum. That's all it is. Carrier semen entering an unprotected vessel. That's all it is. Isn't that phenomenal?
Listening in, don't do that. All right, so let's go on to the next. Let's go on to the next question. Maybe we can get 1 or 2 more, and then we can end out.
All right.
So let's see here. We got. If you have time, are you good with time?
But keep going, brother.
All right. So the next one is: do you believe that geoengineering, also known as chemtrails, is a real thing?
How about this? Let me show you the annals and pages and pages and hours of video of people showing that it does exist. Okay, I can show you numerous, and I can show you photos of myself. I can show you examples of these chemtrails over northern Arizona. I can show you photos of a regular aircraft jet tail expiring, and it evaporates into the atmosphere. And then I can show you a long jet trail with the short jet trail flying right underneath it. Okay, let the evidence speak for itself. The evidence exists.
Now, what would you say is, aside from controlling weather, is there any other benefit or danger to benefit to the government who's doing it against us, but also danger to us as the ones who are having to absorb these chemicals that they're putting into the air? What would you say to that?
Okay, here you go. Ba is barium and aluminum is Al. What does that spell? Baal. Got it? From the Bible. Ba, barium, and aluminum. Those are both toxic metals that they're spraying into the air. Okay? What does that spell? Baal, which is Satan in the Bible. Okay? It's a hedonistic pagan god, and they're spreading his toxic chemicals through the atmosphere. Okay? I'll let you do your own, anybody else, do your own research on it. Look it up. There are hours, there's mountains of evidence that it's going on.
Yep,
I've seen the photos myself, both in Arizona, in the desert, wide open desert of northern Arizona, and here in Salt Lake City area, Utah. I just 2 weeks ago I was taking photos of it. Incredible.
Yeah, it happened nonstop. You don't have to really try that hard, right? You just look up and you can see them.
Just look up and there it is. It's simply incredible. And a lot of people will say, well, that's just atmospheric conditions. Well, why are the atmospheric conditions keeping one stream miles long when the other one just evaporates? Then the difference is one of them is programmed to last and persist in the air. And some people have crisscrosses over a city where you can't see even the blue sky anymore because there's so many crisscrossed plane trails over it. And what they're doing is they're spreading these chemicals over the city's population. Simple.
Yep. All right. So let's see. I'm going to go to. No, I think that's it, man. I think we went through all the questions.
Okay.
I was gonna see if maybe we can take one, maybe two. We'll see how much time we have. Questions.
I have a question, by the way.
Oh yeah, sure. Go for it.
Yes, and you mentioned an example of what was the example you mentioned? Oh, of jet engines not using jet fuel, which is preposterous. Okay, where do you get thrust unless you're burning something? Thrust of that magnitude.
Right.
Okay.
I think for many people, they were wondering how much would you really need beyond obviously the initial thrust. And I think we both agreed that once you're up in the air, it's not having to burn as much, but it's
not a whole lot.
Yeah, it's burning some, but it's not a ton. Yes. Whereas obviously when you're taking off, you need a lot.
Yes,
but
correct.
Sorry for interrupting, but I think that
sure.
there is some questions that people do have about that,
because
of that.
Well, what they need to do, if they have that, like I said, go back to the fundamentals. Go study how jet engine operates and how it creates thrust. A jet engine does not create thrust without combustion. Okay, you don't get combustion without fuel. Okay, now if it is operating off of compressed air, what's compressing the air? You know what I mean? How much compressed air are you going to get in a tank of air? You simply cannot contain enough compressed air to push a jet aircraft, a multi-ton aircraft, down the runway. Good luck. Go give it a try. Go open up your compressed air canister behind your vehicle, put it in neutral, see how much thrust you get, see how fast you can roll down the road. There's a simple experiment right there. Yeah? Okay. My question is,
yeah.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, you had a question. Sorry, go ahead.
Right. My question is, given all this mythology and the seeding of the mythology, it's going to happen as long as they have control. They are deliberately seeding these myths to deceive those people who will not research the fundamentals. As soon as I researched the fundamentals of flat Earth, it didn't take me long before I realized I was living a lie, and it's time to get real. And then I threw out, after reading those books, like I told you about, I threw out all my academic learning, and I'm seeking to re-educate myself. So my question is, how do we help people identify these myths? And I'm asking you, Nathan, you know that people are picking up all these myths, especially about flat Earth. They know that the flat Earth myth is out, the globe myth is dead, and they're doing their best to seed myths even within the flat Earth community. They're posing as flat Earthers, flat Earth believers, and
Yep.
they're trying to deceive people. How
Yes.
do we do the following? Number one, how do we alert people to that?
Yep.
And number two, how do we show them how they by themselves can eradicate the myth and learn things for themselves?
That's a great question. I think for anyone who has actually investigated flat Earth, they're already kind of understand the process, you know. But I still think that you're right. There are some things that can come into play because now everything is unquestioned, right? And until they actually take the time to truly investigate, you know, before opening their mouth, you know, and I think that's part of the disinformation campaign.
Investigate
Is
requires
yeah, you got
research.
to investigate it. And so, for example, I believe that there's a channel out there called the Limitless channel, which is been, I mean, I wanted to initially believe that they were simply self deluded in their thinking regarding this Pac-Man style map, which is completely unscientific as well as
Okay.
unbiblically based, you know.
Seeded myth.
Yeah, exactly. And so these guys,
There you said it's not biblical. If it's
it's
not
not
biblical, there's our litmus test.
nope, not biblical, and it's unscientific. And yet they
There you go.
are referring to themselves as Christian simulation. So it's the Limitless channel with the subtitle of Christian simulation. What does the word simulation mean, Rob?
It means theory. It means
It means
fake.
deception. It means deception as well. Christian
Okay,
deception.
exactly. Yeah.
It's right in plain sight. And so these guys had me on their channel, tried
That's
to
like
get
Christian
me to buy
Science.
into, exactly, trying to get me to buy into their map, and they kind of are a little repulsive once you really get to know them. Initially, it's okay, but
Yeah, exactly. Let me guess. Are they reptiles?
I don't know. All I'm saying is I know that they are very big proponents of this particular ideology of a different map than what is been designed biblically and scientifically speaking by Gleason and also shown by Robotham in his book, you know. So
Yes.
these guys, in a way, whether they realize it or not, which I do have my doubts, believe that they are a disinformation campaign of themselves.
They are a disinformation campaign themselves, posing as truth seekers.
As
Now,
Christians, not just truth seekers, but Christians.
Exactly. You and I know that unfortunately, the average Christian preacher in any denomination, he's been trained at a lying academy. The average Bible schools are fraudulent and they're teaching lies.
Right.
I've got a buddy who personally, he spent 2 years at a Bible college, and I got to talking with him, and I told him that I told him my evidence. He said, Rob, you're absolutely correct. For 2 years, he sat at their knee and learned their nonsense. He was studying lies at the Bible colleges. Okay. So that being said, I want to bring up something else. There's something called a universal theory. Okay. And their two platforms are they deny evolution and they deny some other things, but all they do is they try and shake up science and then recreate it into something else of their own making, but it looks nothing different than the standard science theory. They use carbon dating, and if you know anything about carbon dating, it's absolutely unreliable. Carbon dating is one of the most fraudulent scientific quote facts ever presented. Is carbon dating only works in a vacuum, okay? Because if you add moisture of the morning dew, or the temperature increase during the day, temperature decrease at night, carbon-14, it decays at a different rate when there's heating and cooling, let alone moisture and dry. Okay, so we cannot use the carbon nuclear dating. Okay, so this universal theory, it's another bogus truth seekers, but what they are is they are deceivers posing as, and they're even posing as Christian truth seekers. I went to an entire conference where they're showing this universal theory, and it's bogus, just like what you're talking about, this limitless thing. So what I'm talking about, Nathan, are wolves in sheep clothing. They're dressing up as Christians and as truth seekers, and they're trying to foist, and foist means to deceive and shove their theory on everybody, but they only succeed when they fool people, and enough people ignore their fundamentals, and they follow these people. It's like Christian Science or Scientology that only wants to steal your money. Okay, they only have success when people believe it. Right. And that, like NASA can only have success when people believe it. If enough people would go to their fundamentals and learn that the moon landings are a hoax or a lie, then NASA would have to fall apart. People would demand their $19 billion a year back from the government, because that's what funds NASA, as you well know.
Right. And I think you understand a lot of my mission and what my purpose is within the flat earth community. And I understand a lot of the scientific evidences and proofs, and I think those are extremely important. But my mainstay is getting back to the Bible and doing my best to show, like you were talking about, to the church, where is this error that we've completely missed.
Thank you.
And once we realize this error, we've got to correct it. And what does that error also mean, aside from the one error itself? What other errors could be attached to this?
What does it mean? And where else have we been deceived?
Correct.
And the answer is just about everywhere. Look at the Matrix movies. Those are a documentary of the fake world we live in.
They are. It's probably one of my favorite movies to watch.
Yes.
Because of that.
Absolutely.
That fact that it is so close to our reality more than we like to admit, unfortunately.
Now watch those movies, read 1984, and realize that there's no mystery here. No. Okay, they changed the names, but all we have to do is insert CIA, KGB, FBI, and then we get Mr. Smith.
Yeah.
Okay. Yep. There we go. Right now, Nathan, you made a difference between science experiments and God. Well, but you're going to recognize this. John 7:17. Doesn't Jesus require us to conduct an experiment with the gospel? John 7:17, Jesus says, he who will follow his will, he will do his will, shall know of the doctrine, whether it be of God or whether I speak of myself.
Oh, that makes sense. Well, then also we've got what is the most common one is I think it's 1 Thessalonians. I don't think it's 2 Thessalonians. 1 Thessalonians 5:21. Prove all things, hold fast that which is good. You know.
There you go.
So
there you go.
We
Jesus requires.
And I'm not trying to minimize the scientific experiments. Those go hand in hand. For me, it was first.
Oh, I know you're not.
Yeah, for me, first it was because I had my doubts about what is the Bible saying here, because like we talked about with the quarter versus corner, like I'm like, well, how am I supposed to interpret this? And so for me, at the end of the day, I had to prove my reality with scientific experiments. And once I did that, I knew exactly how the Word of God was supposed to be truly interpreted through that lens. It made complete sense.
Exactly. True science is God. True science, and I say true science, relativity is a theory, okay? Gravity is a theory. Neither have been proven. As a matter of fact, all experiments, as you mentioned, Michelson-Morley, all experiments that attempt to prove gravity and relativity, they all prove that the Earth is not moving. The gravity is non-existent. Would you like to defy gravity? Here's how to defy gravity. Fill your office half full of water. Okay, watch everything float. Okay, you fill that room where you're at. You fill it with water. What's going to happen to your body? It's going to want to float up to the ceiling. Okay, water defies gravity. Okay,
right.
there's numerous. Okay, and some people, when it comes back to the rotation of the Earth, when I hover my helicopter, people will make the ignorant statement that, well, that's because the atmosphere rotates along with the Earth. Well, the obvious response to that is, well, what is wind then?
Yeah, exactly. Wind? And it has different. It'll go this direction at this altitude. It'll go this direction at that altitude.
Exactly.
It has different.
And it'll blow this way for 3 seconds, and then it'll blow the other way for another 3 seconds. Okay. That's right. The atmosphere is obviously not moving with the Earth.
It's independent. It's independent of whatever's happening on the face of the Earth.
Okay. Here's another simple experiment. Here's another simple experiment for you, Nathan. And when I brought up the experiments, I just wanted to point out the fact that there is no difference between science and God. True science is God. Okay.
Amen.
God moved the waters of the Red Sea. God split the waters, and there's a way He did it. Okay. It's God's ways, and He did it. That did happen. Okay. Right. There are many who say there's chariots down there at the bottom of the Red Sea. Well, there they are. There's the evidence.
Exactly.
Okay?
Yeah.
Now, here's an experiment for you. Here you go, Nathan. We're going to prove that the air of the atmosphere does not move along with the Earth. Okay. Put your hand up in front of your face and look at it. Do you feel any air blowing on it? Unless you have a fan going.
Yeah, other than my fan in the room, nothing going on here.
Okay, there you go. You put your hand up in
my
front of your
curtain
face.
is right here. It's just hanging down straight.
There you go. There's no air moving. Now there's your hand. Now blow on it. Okay, you got it. Air only moves. It's a known scientific fact. As factual as there you go. Okay, the surface of water always seeks its level. Sea level means water is always level on its surface. Okay, right. Air as a corollary, air only moves when forced. Okay, now if you want to say that the air moves along and gravity pulls it, well, show me what's forcing the air to move with the earth. There's got to be huge baffles forcing the air to move along with it. Okay, like a riverboat wheel forcing the water to move. There's got to be a baffles moving the air. It doesn't exist. It's impossible. Okay, anybody to say that, it just shows childish ignorance. Voila.
Yep. All right. Well, I think we've run out of time here. Man, I so appreciate your time, Rob, and I'm sure everyone else has as well. One thing I want to leave with, though, is a verse. It's from Jesus talking, and he says, this is when he's talking to Nicodemus. He says, if I have told you earthly things, and ye believe not, how shall ye believe if I tell you of heavenly things? And that's John 3:12, and that I have at the very top of my web page, where I have the over 240 plus Bible verses. And
very good.
Rob, as well as I've got a flyer out there for free you can download, as well as anyone who is interested in.
Oh, you got a flyer, huh?
Yes, it's on that web page. Anyone can download it. It's a PDF. It's got a front and a back. And as well as I have a challenge on that web page listed for debunking the 200 plus Bible flat earth Bible verses. So anyone who wants to take me up on that challenge, it's been out there for, I guess, close to a month almost, and I still have yet one person who has followed through with that challenge. Not surprising. But for Rob, why don't you go ahead and tell people if they wanted to get in touch with you, even if I'm not sure if you do, how they could reach out to you. Do you have a website right now up and running for Flat Earth? And I know you have your school that you're going to be doing as well. So if you want to give both of those websites or whatever, please do so.
Very good. Very good. Here's the website for the Truth University. And it's very simple. Truth Universities, common spelling, 2 words in one, truthuniversities.org. Okay, website's not up yet, but it will be soon. And as soon as I get it up, it's gonna look a lot like WordPress, in which I'm gonna have a bunch of links to other research websites. Okay, so that's what we're gonna just put a bunch of research links on there. Okay, and lectures, research lectures, and anything else in seeking truth. Okay. Number two, I do have a...
And again, that's truth, TRUTH, universities.edu.
Correct.
Is that right?
Universities, plural, .org.
.org. Okay, good.
.org.
I'm going to make sure to pin that in the comments of this video, as well as put it in the video description. I'll put both of your websites. What's the next one?
Thank you. The next one is 3 words, common spelling, flatearthresearch.wordpress.com. flatearthresearch.wordpress.com. Common spelling, 3 words, flatearthresearch.wordpress.com. There you go.
Got it. Okay, wonderful.
Yes, sir. And you mentioned a Bible verse. You mind if I mention a couple? I only mentioned 2.
Yeah, go for it.
Okay, Romans chapter 8, verse 17. If children, then heirs, heirs of God, and joint heirs with Christ. Straight from the Bible, we are all mankind are heirs of God and joint heirs with Christ. Okay? Now, what then is the inheritance of Christ? Well, if the Bible references an inheritance of Christ, well, let's find that. And most people would say, well, the kingdom of God. Well, I can show you in the New Testament, Jesus himself, Matthew 28:18, Jesus says, all power has been given me in heaven and in earth. So therefore, there's two points. We are heirs of God and joint heirs with Christ. And then what is the inheritance of Christ? All power in heaven and in earth. And you brought up a beautiful corollary to that. How can we understand the heavens if we don't understand the earth we live on. And the Bible shows us all 240 verses that you mentioned that we talked about earlier. The Bible is flat, fixed, and covered, biblically proven, and we, the occupants of this petri dish earth in which we a pressurized petri dish earth, we are heirs of God and joint heirs with Christ. And that's all for me.
Amen. All right, Brother Rob, I really appreciate you again, and we'll have to do a follow-up at some point in time, especially once you get closer to launching your truthuniversities.org.
Hey, great idea.
Yeah. All right, man. You guys.
I might have to convert my 2 colleagues on my Truth Universities, but they'll get on board because I will convert them. There's no 2 ways about it.
Well,
there is no other possibility.
Let's just make sure you're in charge of the science department, okay?
Well, and I have to be, because neither of them have any science behind them. There you go. Right. Thanks, amigo. And again, let's see if we can involve anybody else and do a joint discussion, at least as like a conference call.
Yeah, I'm up for it. That'd be awesome.
We've got John Adams is one, and I'm sure there's plenty of other people who would like to do this.
Yeah, I think it would be good for us to do a session on the math, like you had mentioned before. Go over the Pythagorean theorem and just showing how ridiculous and asinine it is to
thank you.
To believe that there is truly a curvature to this earth when anyone with as simple as a 10th grade math education would be able to prove otherwise.
Exactly. Thank you. I remember when I was a sophomore in high school doing this geometry, right? And just along that line, Nathan, the globe earth community can only deceive those who limit themselves to such asinine thinking.
Right.
The globe is asinine, and it's the only people who will let themselves be deceived that are the only ones who will be deceived. You and I, from our radically different backgrounds, we have discovered that the globe is impossible, and it's not too hard to prove it.
Yeah, that's right. All right, brother. You have a wonderful evening. And again, I will leave the links to Rob's websites in the video description, as well as I'll pin a comment to this video so that if you want to reach out to Rob, you're able to. And God bless you all. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, mind, soul, and strength, and love your neighbor as yourself. Jesus Christ, by the way, is the most important message of this whole thing. I don't want anyone to think that that because there's this hyper focus on flat earth, that takes away at all from the message of the gospel, and that that we are all sinners, that we need a savior, that Jesus Christ is the way, the truth, the life, and that no one cometh to the Father except through him.
Thank you.
So let no man deceive you, because even in the flat earth community itself, flat earth can become an idol to itself as well. So I think it's important that we keep that in mind, or with any research that we do. The most important aspect is that 2 things. One is that this doctrine, flat earth doctrine, it draws people closer to Christ. Those in God's word.
Absolutely.
That was my experience. Those who are Christians, I can almost guarantee you that I have not yet met one person who is a Christian who then found out about flat earth and that their faith has not yet been strengthened. It is immediately strengthened because they have more faith in God's word. It's more verifiable. It's more trustworthy. We can just trust it with all your heart. There's nothing that is in question about God's word at that point. At least for me, I had questions because I had doubts, because the scientific community, the pseudoscience, is contrary to God's word, so it made me have less faith in God's word. And then for those who don't believe in God at all, including atheists, they don't believe in God at all. Once they realize, and I've already interviewed one person, and I've had many.
Once they realize we've all been lied to, the science community is a lie.
Yeah, they have no more trust in the pseudoscientific community. They know that once they realize that there's a flat earth, that there's a dome over our head, the earth is stationary, they match that logic up with God's word. And
the Bible describes it.
That's right. Undeniably, they realize that is the creator.
Voila, there it
is the creator. That proves that everything in here is true. And I need a savior. It's Jesus Christ. He is my Lord. And I'm looking forward to his return. So we don't have to live in fear at all as Christians, though we will face persecution. We're not experiencing yet, we will experience it. And even in the small dosages that we are experiencing right now, which isn't really much in comparison to some that have experienced persecution, we should definitely take the time that we have right now and the energy and the resources that we have to proclaim God's truth about his creation. Because
absolutely,
you look at John chapter 1, and it correlates to Genesis chapter 1. Like there's a hand-in-hand correlation. Jesus Christ, he is the Word. He was manifested, and the Word was what was spoken into existence. Everything that we have manifest in Genesis, God's spoken into existence. He is the Word. He's the breath of God.
Yes, sir.
It goes
we can say it like this.
Now.
You and I, we're enlightened to flat Earth. Flat Earth enlightens the Bible. The flat Earth studies show that the Bible is true. Now, the flat Earth is not all of Bible teachings. Flat Earth is not the only thing the Bible teaches. Flat Earth is only one of the thousands of topics within the Bible. And when it comes down to, the flat Earth is a small portion of the Bible. More importantly in the Bible is follow God's 10 commandments. Okay, that's the main idea. And that's what you and I are talking about. And by the way, the national motto is flawed intentionally. In God we trust, but that doesn't talk about Jesus Christ. Our national motto needs to say, in God we trust through Jesus Christ. And it's intentionally made that way by deceiving men. By the way, the founders of the Constitution, they were Masons. They meant well, but they didn't necessarily understand everything that the Bible means.
Obviously.
They should have said, in God we trust, in and only through Jesus Christ, because we don't get the Father without the Son.
Right.
Period.
There would
and
be
that's what we're talking about.
And we understand that God and Lord are only titles. So there is obviously some credibility, I believe, to the sacred name movement, though I think that also, in a way, can become an idol of itself too. So
yes, the litmus test. The litmus test. They recognize God and Jesus Christ and the flat Earth and the Bible? If they don't recognize all of them, then they're an untrustworthy source. Maybe they have some truth, but not enough. Now, the other thing is, Nathan, there's a lot of people who don't, and I talk with my colleagues and family, they think that I'm distracting people from God and Jesus when I talk about flat Earth. But that's patently not the case, because you and I, we've had this hour-long discussion, and our basic tenet is God and Jesus Christ. Amen. We are discussing the truth. The flat Earth exposes the lie of science and popular Christianity. We are defying popular Christianity when we say this, right? Yeah, flat Earth defies that. Flat Earth enlightens the Bible. Flat Earth enlightens God and Jesus Christ, enlightens the world upon which we live, and reflecting that verse you showed from Nicodemus, that Jesus says, if you don't understand earthly things, how can you ever understand the world, the kingdom where I live?
Yeah, that's
good one.
Yeah, and
we use flat Earth to bring people to Christ.
Well,
that's what we do.
Something else I'm learning is that revelation becomes a lot more understandable on a flat Earth.
Oh, absolutely. There we go. Yes.
And that's a completely another
science
topic.
Does.
But yeah, science, the revelation does. The whole Bible, it comes much more to life. So anyways, I know we've gone over even more than what we expected, Rob.
Absolutely, man.
We could probably
go on and on.
Hours, man. Well, I really appreciate your time again, Rob. And again, God bless. And man, we will touch base later. Thank you for all the viewers who have tuned in. Please give a thumbs up, give a comment below this video, as well as share it with others. And if you haven't yet subscribed, please subscribe, because there will be more conversations to come. God bless you, Rob.
More to follow, amigo. Thanks.
All right,
have a good one.
Bye.
All right. Good night.